and welcome everyone to another of our gig community calls. Today we're going to be talking about the Open Hardware Manager with our all-time gig member, Nathan Parker. First of all, a very warm welcome to you, Nathan. You have been away for a while, at least from the gig world to me personally, and learning where you live in the US, I think I understand now, which I think it has to do with the time difference more than anything. So we're very
Yeah.
happy that we're able to schedule this call with you a little later than usual community calls. So I'm so glad also to see many of our gig members tuning in, even though it might be end of day for so many. But yeah, or like beginning of the day for some, like Victor, just joined from Brazil. Hello. And
More.
Mustafa, hello. So yeah, Nathan, I'm gonna give you the floor shortly, but I would love to start by saying why this community call is very interesting to gig members and to us in general in gig. First of all, when you told me about what you've been working on since COVID, since 2020, the Open Hardware Manager, which is this piece of open source software that is built on the Internet of Production Alliance Open Know-how standards. For those who are in this world that would understand what that means. And the idea of it was to connect designs with places where it can be produced anywhere in the world, open source designs to places. It is more than a map from what you have showed me. We have worked in Gig on the Make project for 3 years on mapping and bringing in mapping makerspaces basically from around the world, but specifically in Africa and Europe, and connecting these two together. And I'm just so curious to hear from you on what you have been doing in this regard and how it works. We will be expecting a live demo as well today, so you can run us through the amazing work you've been working on. But before we get into the subject matter, I would love if you could just take a moment to introduce yourself, tell us how you knew Gig, and then we could kick off things.
Yeah, of course. So, um, let's see. So, my name's Nathan. I first got connected to Gig when I met Geraldine in Kathmandu in, I want to say 2017, which is also where I first met Andrew Lamb. Uh, I had been, I had just come from spending about 2 months in the Black Rock Desert building temporary infrastructure for Burning Man, the big arts festival in the States. And the director of, I think, Burners Without Borders, uh, and Sam Block, who was running Communitaire at the time, was like, "You should come out to Nepal. We're doing a thing. We're gonna set up a makerspace in some, shipping containers donated by the UN." And I had this vague inkling of an idea that I was starting to call MakerNet. I show up and I meet Andrew, and he's like, "Oh, really? I was also starting a project called MakerNet. We should talk." I met Geraldine, was brilliant and lovely, and gave her her speech on critical making, which was very inspiring. And I think I credit Geraldine's talk with a lot of why I am on this path. So thank you for that. Um, all that is to say, and then I think the next year I actually came out for Gig proper in Berlin. Um, the work with Andrew, as I mentioned, a lot of ended up leading to that summit in Warsaw with a whole bunch of Gig members where we kind of came together and we're like, there should be universal open hardware data standards that we can use to solve a lot of these coordination problems. And for a while we had standards, but as I've been yelling about for a long time, standards on their own are not particularly useful. And so the notion that I've been kind of driving at for a while essentially is, that you have your 5-layer sort of diagram. The bottom you have standards. In this case, open know-how, open nowhere. On top of standards, you build tools, simple, single purpose command line tools that do one thing very well. You wrap up all of your tools into an engine, kind of giving you like a one-stop shop for all of the things that you need to deal with. On top of an engine, you can build services where someone remotely can just ask your engine for an answer and get it. And then finally, you can have a platform. And I've been saying for years that until we get at least to an engine, it doesn't matter how cool the standard is, no one's going to use it. No one manually interacts with a data standard. Uh, and finally, for combination of circumstances and change of available tools and so on, I was like, okay, I'm just going to build this myself. Um, this all, I think that one other piece of context is I spent most of the COVID lockdown over here in the States coordinating with groups like Open Source Medical Supplies and Helpful Engineering, trying to help coordinate the sort of make a response to the lack of medical supplies, at least here in the States, but also around the world. And it was, equal parts inspiring and frustrating. I imagine most of you here were at least peripherally involved, if not deeply involved, in similar efforts at the time. And basically, what I saw was, uh, people reinventing the wheel every day. People building systems in order to handle these coordination problems that were, ephemeral and were going to just, fall away and rot the minute volunteers stopped working on them, and then would have to be reinvented from scratch again the very next time a crisis occurred that damaged the supply chain, which was absolutely going to happen again. And so I spent a lot of time thinking and working with the folks at Helpful Engineering, who really kind of kept the flame alive on this one, trying to work out, what this engine would need to be to solve that problem specifically. Cat has opinions. Okay, so all that being said, what that has led to currently is I'm attempting to do this in a more difficult way than it necessarily needs to be, because of the problem I'm specifically trying to solve. And I'll get into demo and I'll get into questions and answers and all that, but just to sort of lay out a couple things briefly. It would be trivially easy to just make yet another website, and everyone just says, okay, well, we're all going to come to this website and we're going to put our designs in and we're going to put our information in, and you know trust that you, Nathan, specifically won't do anything untoward with this data. But I think we've all been burned by websites in the past, and like put all of our data up on somewhere, and then like that project loses funding and it all goes away, or it gets bought by someone who's no longer trustworthy and now someone else has our data. um, you know, it's the single point of failure is the problem that we're trying to solve, and making another single point of failure doesn't solve it. So I'm doing this in a more complicated way to try to solve for this problem through federation, where anyone can run their own node. The software is already published and available on Docker Hub. You can just pull the image down, run it, install it directly on your own hardware. You can do that today. The thing that I'm working on currently is how is the way that these systems mesh together, so that, for example, okay, if anyone, a quick show of hands, I know not everyone has hands up, but a quick show of hands, are you familiar with mesh networks broadly? Yes? Okay. A couple people. For those who are not, sort of a brief idea, basically a mesh network is typically used in telecommunications as a way of having a decentralized peer-to-peer self-healing network for communication. So instead of a single trunk that branches out to individual endpoints that all call back into the central trunk, you have no central authority. You just have a bunch of nodes that can all reach each other, and through each other pass that signal on elsewhere. So if one node goes down, the whole system sort of heals itself around it, and there's no central point of failure. So what I'm attempting to do is create a supply chain mesh network, which is tricky, but I think is doable. So yeah, I think that's probably enough for an introduction. Are there any questions before I continue?
No, that's amazing. I maybe want to welcome more gig members that have joined us. Like, we have a bunch of very exciting group. Antonio, who has worked on the mapping for Make, is here. So this is why I also want to welcome Antonio. Maybe you're in
Hi,
Mexico.
Antonio.
in the world. Welcome. So good to have you, Sam from Ghana. You just joined as well. Thank you for joining. Yeah. And with this, I hand over to you. So uh, the floor is
Would you like a
yours.
demo?
I want to say, please explain to us more about the Open Hardware Manager and how it works, but I also don't want to dictate. I'm enjoying very much the direction this call is going into.
Um, yeah, let's see. Let me here. I will I'll just do a little walkthrough. Hey, Antonio, good to see you. Um, let's see. Oh, I need you to approve screen sharing.
Done.
All right. Okay. Let's see what we got here. Okay. Um, yeah. Okay. So, a couple of things. Um, in this specific instance that I've got running, uh, I had a bunch of sort of synthetic data seeded in here that I was using for the demo when I was at Republica, I got what, a month ago. Um, and I, put in synthetic data sort of specifically to ensure that every design in there had a valid match so you could see what a match looked like. But it ended up, now that this is public, it ended up being a bunch of sort of weird nonsense data, like made up spaces that I wanted to get rid of. Um, Conveniently, so I met when I was at Republica Jason Petio from the Maps of Making project, who I imagine many of you have met. And their project was built on the Open Nowhere standard, uh, such that it took me basically 5 minutes to write a connector. So now all of this is just directly reading the mapsofmaking.org database and rendering it. Um, so this is all of the makerspaces that they've got in their system. Probably find Berlin in there. But the map is not really the thing here. So uh, the designs. Okay, so one of the things that I tried to solve with this system, while we're talking about designs, is uh, again, just giving someone a new data standard to interact with is not gonna get you very far. Everyone who's already got an open source hardware system is not going to manually rewrite it into your new standard. And so part of what I've done with Open Hardware Manager is give it this sort of like ingestion and transformation pipeline where you can point it at a URL for any open hardware project on GitHub or GitLab. And this can be expanded to include other sources, but those are sort of the two main ones right now. But you can put it at a project and it will parse the entire thing, figure out, all of the files, all the documentation, and generate a valid open know-how project from the existing system. So, all of these projects, all of this, when it's 8 pages, that 174 designs, all of these are designs from like open source medical supplies, from biohacker collectives, from, these are real projects by other people from the internet that I have converted into open know-how. Let me see if I can find you a good, so the more complicated one. Yeah, here we go. So yeah, everything like intended use, authorship, license, materials, uh, all of this is, I have to go find, here we go. We go look at the actual origin just for a brief comparison. So, this is what I pointed it at. It parses the README, parses the documentation. Is that actually, okay, yeah. And pulls out things like this. Within the browser, you can, you can render documents. There's a sort of a roadmap item later on to actually like render the 3D CAD files in browser. That'll be a bit more of a lift, but I think it might be could be useful if there's demand for it. So now you've got this here. What does that actually let you do? Because a few things. So uh, an important distinction that lets this system work is that it divides uh, the heavy files and the light files. So, open know-how is it's a very light, it's a manifest, basically. It's just metadata, thin, flat JSON file that says, here's everything you need to know about this design, who made it, how it's made, what you can do with it, blah, blah, blah. And then a long list of URLs and links out to the heavy files. So, here's where you find the STL files for printing. Here's where you find the DXF files for laser cutting. Here's where you find the code, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. All of that, all of the heavy files together is the package. And so you can do all of your matching operations. You can do all of the things that you need to do, about like, where can I get this made? Is this the thing I'm looking for, et cetera, with the manifest. But when it's time to build it, you need the package. And so, say, for example, you're like, okay, well, I want this package. I want the package for this project, so I can build it locally.
Because yes, had
Sorry, it's hard to hear you. Can you say that again?
No, I think it's if Amalu was not muted. So.
Okay, we're talking to someone else. So yeah, here, this lets you build and save the package for anything, so you can have it locally. There's a whole interface specifically for that. But so yeah, there's that. You can, okay, and then here you can save it. So once this gets into full-on mesh network, there is, and this kind of ties very closely in with the project that Vicky and Eric, and I know someone else who I'm forgetting, I'm sorry, are working on for the Maker Resilience Kit, the MARC project. When you are in crisis scenarios where there's little to no functioning internet, or you have you have sparsely available internet, things like that, this is what allows you to do a lot of your kind of important operations with very, very little internet, with or with none at all, just over a mesh. And then when you actually need to move the heavy files, you can do that over BitTorrent. You can do it over other protocols that can kind of function in a distributed way. So let's see. What was I? All right. So that's kind of our designs. Any questions before I move on? And there's sort of a lot to go through. Here is all of the designs. There's a little badge that they're indicating that they're from the Maps of Making project. Hopefully, as time goes on, there will be other sources that are like valid spaces that are kind of just in the OHM network, and there will be other networks outside of Maps of Making that we can incorporate. The whole idea is to sort of pull together a multitude of sources without requiring everybody to come to one place. Obviously you can just link out directly to the space. You can kind of see what processes that they can do, where they are. Filter by country. Oh, I need to actually make that the real country, not the code. But say like, show me only places that can do 3D printing. So, all right. Well, obviously some stuff I need to play with. I think the status isn't set on all these. Yeah. Match a design against these is, I'm not sure if this feature is working currently. Let me see. Yeah, I have to tinker with that. the goal of this, once it's a little bit more tested, is basically to be able to say, okay, here's a list of spaces near me. Show me all of the known designs that these places can make. So it's sort of a reverse match. Um, let's see. I know let's make sure this is working. Okay. I think this is all still like actively in development, and the matching was working, but I think we're getting some weird bugs in here I'll need to tinker with. So I apologize for that. Last thing, and this is again still stuff that's I'm like adding this week. So a lot of this stuff is going to evolve over the next couple of weeks. But basically, here is where we start getting into the tools that you need to say, okay, well, this is the node that I'm running. These are the people that are attached to this node. Here's this, the identities that I've provisioned and the spaces that are kind of part of this. Here's how you claim a space. Here's how you handle, authentication and so on. So it's not just a bunch of anonymous users. That is all there. So yeah, I think that's probably enough of a walkthrough for the moment. I see if there's some comments in here.
Do we have questions? I have some, but I would love to hear from people. What are your feelings, thoughts on what you have seen so far? Okay, until we do have, I do have a question. So, how do you get a design on there? Is there like a specific process? So you've mentioned you have something like 170 design, right, on these 8 pages. How did you pick these designs? How did you test for them? And are you going to keep this purely medical? Are you planning to expand this library with more devices? Like what are your plans for design?
Okay. So it's not purely medical. There are definitely overrepresented, in part because I just recently consumed a catalog of like 140 or so designs from open source medical supplies specifically. So I think this is all of OSMS plus a bunch of other stuff. But many of the designs on here are not medically related. They're just good designs that I found. A lot of them I picked specifically just to have a good range of complexity. It's sort of trivial and not particularly interesting to be like, okay, well, here's a place that can make this 3D printed doodad with no moving parts. That's fine. Not very impressive. But the NASA Jet Propulsion Library publishes on GitHub a complete design for an open source Mars rover that you can build with consumer hardware. And that is much more complicated. Hundreds of parts, software, lots of different processes to kind of get it all together. So that's also in there. Sorry, you asked a couple different follow-up questions, and I'm losing the thread. Remember me what else you said?
So what's your plan? I mean, I have plans onto the future of this platform, right? On how do you plan on getting this more makerspaces to use it, more design on it? Yeah, I have also some ideas to help depending on your answer.
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's one of those things that is a little tricky because of the way that I've chosen to do it in a kind of decentralized manner. If it was just everybody come to this website and add your data, that would be an easy ask, but it creates the single point of failure. So that is essentially what I'm trying to do is say that, for those who don't want to or don't have the sort of, the tech available to deal with hosting their own and just want to have this available, great, come here. I'm in the process of building the interfaces right now that let you say, okay, I want to add, a new design. I want to add a new space. There's obviously a lot of ways that you can get, like if that's just purely public and any anonymous user can just add stuff, that obviously creates problems. So I'm trying to build in like just enough friction, but that it's, you're not flooded with garbage data, but that people who are using it in good faith can get stuff in there. And you need to, of course, like deduplicate things and make sure that if 5 different people upload the same design, that you don't get 5 versions of the same design, you get one design. So I'm working on that in the background. And some tools for allowing people to say, okay, well, here's a completely new project that I'm just going to create in this interface entirely that just lives here instead of it also living externally. So I'm working on all that. Adding new spaces. Similarly, you want to deduplicate that so you don't end up with 5 Fab Lab Berlins, so there's all that's in progress. I think probably right now, the best way to add a project is if that project is already posted on GitHub or GitLab and you kind of consume it with this system. The button for doing that is currently work in progress this week. And then adding spaces will be slightly more complicated, but will come shortly after that.
Amazing. We have a question from Jolene, please.
It's more like a series of contemplations based on your talk. Thank you so much for sharing. It's really cool to see the data standard like in action like that. And I guess yes, Antonio, please feel free to speak after me. So just eyeing the chat as well. I guess I would just like also many thoughts on how to infuse. This is very self-indulgent, so forgive, and I know this will be shared with others, but I hope they will forgive this as well. Thinking about ways to employ this within the gig network, where and how it will make sense to also include this kind of data about members and their work and their designs is like one train of thought I was having as you were sharing. But the other one is that we are also still hoping that one day magically we will have the capacity and technical environment to resurface all the Carables data and build on that and expand on that. And of course, seeing sort of this medically focused application is inspiring for that, because there's still like that world of open source hardware that was created for Carables. The platform went under, it got lost, things are not linked and published anymore in a good way. And of course, it would be so nice to tie this back also to the profiles of people working within Gig and make this a bit more living information again, So
Yeah.
Those are just things that I was thinking of when you were sharing and wondering, like how could we maybe take next steps toward using OHM in this regard, but also perhaps whether you see other forms of application within the gig network that you would be interested in exploring and seeing how we could support your work on using this in different ways, basically.
Thank you, Jolene. Yeah, I'm excited to share it with the gig network and see what you guys want to do with it. I have been sort of toiling in obscurity on this, quietly alone in my sort of corner of the network for a while, and it is really gratifying to kind of bring it to people who are like, oh yeah, I can see what you would do with this. Antonio, you had a question or a comment?
Yes, hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. First of all, Nathan, this is very nice work, nice implementation. I'm very happy to see the progress. And I'm familiar with Nathan's work. So Nathan is familiar with my intentions for research. I haven't shared much of my progress, but I would like to make not like give more context for the questions that you were given, and it's related to how does this information system gets more adoption, how we put more data onto it. And that's exactly the two major pain points we have with the data availability right now in regards of the worldwide online data for manufacturing. And so there is a distinction between what it comes to be operational readiness or preparedness and what is information preparedness. So there needs to be a differentiation with that, and it needs to be a bridge in between these two. So having the information is a part of the possibility of being a supplier. That doesn't mean that the supplier is factually or operational capable, because we still need to find a way to verify what's in the real world and the data. So that's to answer why is it difficult to adopt, because currently many of the organizations we have are not having an information system that keeps their production check or there is no inventory. There's not, all those tools are not easily available, or they are not adopted by Fab Labs or makerspaces. That's one. The other thing is that contributions to data are very difficult because people don't find immediate value to sharing their information, and they value their information a lot. They're very private and focused and centered on not sharing much of what they can do, or because they don't trust information systems for many reasons, like that are valid, I think. And Nathan having this implementation being federated and decentralized makes a good point for people to start contributing, but it does not give value immediately. So people is like, why would I share all of this? Make an effort to share all these or use these formats, and if I don't know if someone in 1 to 3 years will call me and ask me for making a design using this platform. So this effort is going to be an interesting point for research, because now we have AI, and what we need to do is work on the taxonomy and the classification so we can make these AI systems break the information collection into a more simple step, and not asking people to make all the whole process by hand, and so, but Nathan's implementation is what is needed for make this gap or bridge between the gap in between the hardware that we are designing, and also meeting with the people that is interested in making a sort of like, not a marketplace. I won't call it a marketplace, but I would call it like an open network for people that wants to make more open hardware available in everywhere. So I make this, I break the points like this because I think it makes a more sense to see Nathan in the place of making a tool for bridging hardware and people that is interested in offering this hardware, and not for the people that needs to adopt this tool immediately, if like that there needs to be a specific case. And I think one of the most studied ones here in this group is a disaster response, and so the tools and the hardware need to be aligning into a purposeful mission. In this case, I think if we see it from the point of view that we need to offer something that will be operable and will be valuable during a disaster response, like we experienced recently with Venezuela, then it makes sense that why people need to adopt these things. And as we start aligning to this purpose, I think it will be more clear how and when people will start collecting more data. And so I just wanted to make the point to make it more clear when people want to find it more valuable. But thank you, Nathan, for sharing, and thank you for for the space.
Thank you so much, Antonio. Appreciate it. I know you've worked a lot on this space. I would love to follow up with you at some point because I know that you've got you were working on a map of maker spaces that I would love to incorporate into this as well.
Definitely. Looking forward to reconnect. I mean, it's not so long. It's been, I think, April or last call. But after that, it was a little hectic. But yeah, Ricardo also knows, so I will be very excited to share with all of us.
Excellent. Thank you.
If I
Um,
add, sorry,
yeah,
just
go
want to
ahead.
add very, very quick note on what Antonio is saying and exactly the question that I've been thinking about. You have mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, people reinventing the wheel in time of crisis. And even though this was inspired by the time of COVID, I would say during these times that we're living in, we are kind of operating in a very weird modus, specifically for some regions, right? Where it's constant crises somewhere in between. So how do we make sure that that level of preparedness, like it's amazing work, and I'm adding a lot to it, Antonio's saying, is how do we get people informed of that tool, but also the importance of them using this tool, documenting their projects and spreading awareness behind around that? Like, is this something that you're thinking about at all? I mean, yeah.
Sorry, hang on, I'm sharing something really quick. Okay. So I've dropped the code and the Docker image in the chat for those who want it. So let me can you restate the question? I'm not sure I quite understand where you're going.
So I'm thinking in terms of usability, let's say, of the platform. So part of that would require spreading the awareness of people creating the designs and the documentation, learning on how to document, as Antonio was saying, is that layer of information production. And the second layer would be general awareness of the like awareness that the open hardware manager exists, right?
Right. Yeah.
So just thinking in both ways and thinking, are you thinking about this as you develop, as you work on the technical side of things?
A little bit. I have been, I mean, I will admit I have been so sort of, you know, deep in the tunnel, just trying to kind of get this built, that I haven't had a lot of bandwidth to give to the thought of like how to drive adoption. It's something that I'm hoping you guys can help me with. I think once I get it to a slightly more polished place, I will be able to shift my attention more to that. You know, it's not a version 1.0 yet. It's still obviously, you know, very much in progress. But I think the 1.0 is, you know, visible on the horizon. You know, once I can get so the thing that I am like in the middle of doing, I got, you know, halfway through this last night and then I had to go to bed. Is I have so there's the, you know, the version my supervisor is here. There's the version that, you know, you saw running on the website, which is just hosted on a cloud server. And I have spun up like 3 or 4 other nodes of the exact same software in different geographic locations. And then, you know, I'm working on like seeding different designs to them and kind of testing out how they interact. Like you should be able to, for example, set a policy on your node and say, okay, the stuff that we share is private only. It doesn't get mirrored to other places. But we still want to be able to pull any public designs that are published from other places. You know, you would need like the permissions and the way that you know, access sort of flows up or downhill through the network is still being worked out and tested. I think it is mostly there. But you know, this really comes down to the trust problem, and which Antonio was kind of getting at as well. You know, people, for a lot of very valid reasons, are leery of putting more data online, especially if it's, you know, just some random new website. on hardware they don't control. And that is the low trust environment that we live in, unfortunately. And so I really think that if I can get through this next chunk of work and let people really see that like spinning up their own node is easy, putting all of their own data on it in a way that they control is easy, and then deciding which of that data is going to be shared and with who, I think that will establish sort of the base layer of trust. I don't really want to drive a lot of traffic to this before then, because a lot's going to change between now and then, and it'll be very clearly under construction. And I think we all know, like you go to a site that's like promising but not actually working yet, and you're like, oh yeah, I'll maybe come back to this later. You bookmark it and you don't think about it for 2 years. I would rather have it be a little more ready before we start publicizing it. That said, for people who are already kind of deep into this work, who understand the sort of technical problems and would like to engage with it as developers or beta testers, or people who understand that it's this is its current under construction state and want to be involved at that level, I would be more than happy to bring you in and help figure out what you can help with. But like public end users, not quite ready.
Fair enough. More questions. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, one other thing I was going to say is the other big things that I want to see finished before I open it up, kind of speaking to what a couple of you were saying, is the tools for creating a new design or onboarding a new design into the system, and a new space. And those are so I think with those three things in place, I think that's kind of the checklist.
Amazing. Maybe opening the floor a little bit to more of our gig members, maybe even Eric or Vicky, since I know you guys will be starting the Mark project soon, and Nathan is working with you guys on that. So maybe more on this collaboration, if you would like to share with us. I'm very curious.
I'd love to, but the collaboration is very technical. If you've ever been to the forum of Wacoma, there's a very long thread in which I said hi in the beginning, and then I basically shut up. But I mean, it got technical really, really fast. And Nathan and Eric are having a blast. For all of you who know him, Tim Wille is a big fan of this project and got involved there as well, because it finally makes technical sense as well as sense in a bigger scheme. I don't know. I can't really explain how it will work technically. And I'm kind of making time for Eric to clean up his finger and get on the call, because I know he's painting his house as well. And what I can say is, obviously, this is what's missing, right? Because what we're trying to do is ensure that in a crisis, makerspaces can be connected even if the internet is shut down, and that they have what they need to help themselves before they get connected again. But what these needs will be and what will be on there, the whole curation is, of course, a bit out of scope and needs to be done, but gets a lot easier if you have this open hardware manager. Plus, we're still wondering how to make use and make sense of the Maker Resilience kits when there's no disaster, right? Because we know that things only make sense if people know how to use them. And if the kits don't make sense without it or pre-disaster, then nobody will know how to use them during a disaster and post-disaster. And that's the two things where I understand why we need the Open Hardware Manager, but I have no idea how all of this will work together, like API style, technically. I've got no idea. And maybe Eric is here now.
Thank you, Vicky.
Sorry.
No, that's good. I think part of my job is also trying to help
That's
explain
incredible.
this to non-technical people so that it you know, you feel like you have a good grasp on it, even if you can't speak to the technical details. I think, the general shape of it should still make sense. Hey, Eric. And everyone's moving into their apartments. Okay. Yeah, we can catch up later if you're busy. It sounds like Eric is out shopping. Um, yeah, there's what I think is really interesting is I think a lot of us are arriving at very similar conclusions around the notion that something like this needs to work on a mesh network sort of substrate. So the Mark project is, sort of an attempt to do this with, some like um, basic, like I think like Meshtastic, I think is the protocol, where you essentially have like a Raspberry Pi with a little bit of networking hardware and OHM installed on it, preloaded with some designs that are curated for for applicability in a crisis. There's also I don't know if you guys know Tomas Diaz from the Fab City project. He is also considering something that sort of builds on the Fab City project, but more for like climate resilience and whatnot. That also is kind of trying to solve this problem in a distributed way. So I think the distributed hardware and mesh network approach is something that a lot of us are coming to in various ways from parallel, or from our different directions. And so if anyone else has also been noodling on this, I think we should all get together, because I think there's a lot of versions of this problem that are being solved right now. I just submitted a grant application to I think it's like the Breakout conference. Thanks to Eric for letting me know about it. They're the makers of the WeSync protocol, OUI sync. And if that grant gets approved, then I'd be kind of developing sort of in similar vein, a way of using OHM on, kind of your own hardware on probably a Raspberry Pi or something like that, in such a way that you can use their secure protocol for handling all of the data layer. So the idea being, moving moving the open know-how manifests, as I said earlier, very lightweight, very easy. You can do it on, extremely low bandwidth, but moving the heavy stuff, has more security concerns and it has more bandwidth concerns. And their protocol, I think, would be a good fit for handling the heavy data layer, in a way that's sort of safe and secure and can move it, across a mesh without any individual on that mesh being able to see it unless it's addressed to them. So this would be more for, disaster and sort of response in places that are, under more adversarial conditions. I think like one of the conversations was, there's a lot of, for example, maker spaces and people with 3D printers in Ukraine building drones for defense. And that would definitely qualify as an adversarial condition where you don't want to, advertise what you're building and where to just anybody, but you do need to coordinate with people who are going to use it. So something like that.
Super interesting. Also conversation. Well, we're approaching the end of today. I'm just gonna open the floor for whoever wants to share final thoughts, feelings about this. I personally have enjoyed so much learning about this, and as I told you, Nathan, the first time we met at Republica, it feels like it's a lot of things that we at Gig have been working on, coming together. So I do know that it's still in the process of being developed and developing. I look forward to how Gig, us as a team and community, would be able to help you do that. I also look forward to see what comes out of your collaboration with our Gig Fund project, Mark, with Eric, Vicky, and Susan. Yeah, and I just leave the floor to, I see Geraldine unmuting herself, anyone else who send us out.
Thanks, Vadia. So I was just waving because there's a fly, but not at you. I was just gonna say, just on a linking and practically level, we're connected with Fab Cities through some of the Horizon projects that we do, and in conversation on a project level, I would say, but it would definitely be interesting to connect with Thomas and see perhaps on a more strategic level what people are planning, because that's obviously something that Gig is doing on a practical level through the fund and in different ways, and we always think about how to systemize a little bit more or share in different ways also outside of the network. So yeah, that sounds like it's definitely something we should be chatting about, hopefully in future, Nathan. And as he was saying earlier, when the time has come, we'd be super happy to see how to create different test use cases, share the work that you've been doing also more broadly. So yeah, it was thanks so much for sharing everything today, and look forward to those next steps then.
Yeah, of course. Hopefully we can do a follow-up when things are a little bit, when the engineering is slightly more settled. One quick note I just thought of, I dropped a link in chat, but I just learned yesterday, I think, about digitalpublicgoods.net, which I don't know. Yeah, I assume some of you here would have heard of, but I just came across their site, so I don't really know how much they align with what we're doing, but at least from like reading their about page, they seem like some an entity that Gig or some version of us here should be connected to and a part of, and that they might be able to support some of this work at like being adopted at scale when it's ready. So if anyone has inroads or connections there, I would love to talk about that. But we can obviously do that offline.
This is Andrew. I'm sorry I can't raise my hand or anything because I am driving whilst listening intently to this great community call. Thank you for organising it. First of all, just to say on the Digital Public Goods Alliance, there's a few Gig members that have applied to and got their products registered in the Digital Public Goods Alliance registry.
Nice.
I know out of Hamburg, I know Wikipedia is in there, and part of what you need is a strong user base and so on. So it's definitely sort of something to aim for in the future, Nathan. I also want to thank you for the fact that you're sharing work in progress here. That is the entire spirit of open, of working openly like this. And I think that right at the beginning, when you were talking about the different layers, I'm beginning to realize how projects like the Mark project, but also other platforms like SeekMake that we worked with in the Internet of Production Alliance with makerspaces in 3 African countries, which is a platform, could potentially be using your engine behind the scenes.
Yeah, no, I would love to find that. Glad you could make it.
Yes.
And I guess I will see you next week.
Yeah. Well, I think if my signal's holding up, I just want to say you're making real an idea that we spoke about at Republica a decade ago, which is about collecting makers to markets, getting the designs made in places around the world. Open hardware designs made on demand locally is what you are enabling, and that will completely transform the economic basis of the planet and the way that people create and consume physical products. It is literally bringing internet thinking into the world of the hardware domain, of the physical domain. It's really incredible work. Well done.
Thank you so much. On that note, thank you all for joining. I'm really delighted to share this with you, and hopefully we can. I will be hard at work getting this sort of more polished and ready for prime time. I would love any feedback or future requests from all of you. There's a lot of stuff that is already built but just sort of exists on the back end. So like you can, if you are hosting your own and talking to the API directly, there's stuff that exists, but it's not wired into the front end yet. But part of the process of deciding what to get, what gets wired in is understanding what people want to do with it. So please, play around on the website. If you find stuff that's broken, I might know about it, I might not, but please do let me know if you find stuff that you're like, oh, it would be really cool if it did this. I want to, when I look at this is the thing that I'm thinking of trying to do. Please tell me these things. This is all great information. And then hopefully, I think by next month, when the federation tools are a little bit more reliable, I think that's when that's when I will start actively looking for people to kind of test that out and like spin up their own node, populate it with their own designs, and kind of test out that process of being like, okay, I want to share this, but not that. I want to sync automatically with the designs published over here and kind of let that process sort of be tested out in the real world. So if anyone's interested in participating in that, would love your help in like a month or so when it's ready. Thanks, Eric.
Okay, that's it. Thank you so much, Nathan. We can't thank you enough for a great community call. Welcome back. And we know this is only the start of seeing you more. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a lovely rest of the day, night, wherever you are.
Thank you so much.